Hi everyone, Kirby fan here, and welcome to the 20th Copyability Spotlight. It's honestly kind of crazy that we've been through this many, and I have all of you to thank for the support. Despite what the ability in question may look like, we're in for quite the wild ride today, so I hope you enjoy this spotlight. I've already got August spotlight figured out, since I choose whichever one we're going to cover for Kirby month. Check out this video if you want to learn more about how I'll be uploading a video every single day during August, but you can still have a ball in the comments by voting for September's Copyability Spotlight. We'll have the voting end August 31st and combine the votes from this episode and the August one. Bounce to action by pressing the like button and change into a fan by ringing the notification bell after subscribing. Over 75% of you aren't subscribed, and actually, I think I went through all of the Ball Kirby puns already. Subscribing, ring the bell, comment, like, all of that helps me out, and I appreciate all of you who support me. All of that being said, on with the show. Okay, spotlight time. This is always fun. Let's see which ability won. Wow, is this what I think it is? A shorter, simpler copyability spotlight? This ability's only been in 2 games? Well, let's not get too ahead of ourselves. A fair few commenters who voted for Ball over these last 20 spotlights, that's still so unbelievable to me, have mentioned that it's actually appeared in a fair few games, more than just it being a copy ability would suggest. To answer the question on everyone's minds, yes, I'm doing very well today, thank you so much for asking. No, we'll only be covering Adventure and Nightmare in Dreamland today. I have a surprise in store for next month. We'll be going into more detail on a lot of the games I would have otherwise covered today. And that's another thing you can guess in the comments. Do you know what the surprise is going to be? I am so mean sometimes. Anyway, for now, what is there to even say on Ball? Does an ability like this even deserve a spotlight? Did this ball bounce high, or was it one of those cheap little knockoff bouncy balls that you'd find for ludicrously cheap at those weird, cheap-looking places, I don't know, that immediately drop and don't bounce even once and make you question why the world functions in such a cold-blooded way? That last part may or may not just be me, but regardless, let's talk about Ball. Copy abilities can typically be broken down into 3 categories and maybe a combination mix of 2. Abilities that move through levels quickly, abilities that defeat bosses quickly, and abilities that make you feel better about yourself because could be worse, you could be like that one. Pre-2010s, the common opinion was that Ball fell into the 3rd category. After all, it's just Ball. It's scary. Next, you're gonna tell me that you can credit warp by sleeping. Like that'd ever happen. But to spoil the fun a bit early, Ball actually does have a lot going for it. Honestly, no hyperbole here, I'd say there's a real strong argument that Ball is silently one of the top 5 best abilities in Nightmare in Dreamland. Even in Adventure, it's very good. It's not top 5. It has some issues that it doesn't really have in Nightmare. Of course, a part of that has to do with Tornado, but you don't really need me telling you for the 8,000th time that Tornado is the best ability in Adventure, right? Right. To start with the less fun example, Ball has some fun niches for movement. I only said less fun. We're still having a good time here. While these generally don't exist in Adventure due to how the ball bouncing works, you can use Ball as an even faster, more insane version of High Jump. High Jump, as it stands, is another top 5 ability in that game, so this isn't me trying to meme and sell it short. That is a genuinely valuable trait. So how does this work? Ideally, you'll get Ball where you can find a very, very small area where Kirby can fit into, but not really jump high. You turn into Ball, and, as it turns out, you have just enough height to jump as Ball. You bounce for a second or so, then look at the craziness. In any percent, this is only used 3 times at the moment, but there are plenty of places throughout the game in general that this can be set up. You can also get a pretty cool boost by bouncing to the ceiling, unballing, as I'm choosing to call it since, come on, just say it out loud, I promise you it's funny, and then reballing. Balling is just a very funny word, I guess. Ball itself has a lot of invincibility on it, so you don't have to worry about your average enemy hurting you. Frankly, I'm more worried about them, but that's just kind of the nature of the Kirby games that we play. In this regard, there's only two issues that come to mind. One, this doesn't actually work in Kirby's Adventure. Yeah, Ball Kirby is just too thick and doesn't have enough room to bounce if you set it up like this. It's a shame because seeing more abilities than Tornado and High Jump in any percent would have been kinda nice, but what can you do? The second problem, which is actually an issue with Ball and Nightmare, is that there simply aren't a lot of areas that you can set something like this up. In my research, I noticed some potential in stepping forward to grab it instead of Spark, but I am not much of a Nightmare runner. For all I know, somebody's already tried this, and it is actually slower. Even if that was the case, you'd still only grab it for movement a couple of times. It's a fun little niche, but you don't see it enough for it to leave much of an impact. And unlike Adventure, where it's almost only Tornado start to finish, Nightmare has much better ability variety. Wheel, Burning, High Jump, Sword, and Spark, depending on the situation. It sounds like the perfect opportunity for it to show its stuff. And despite what I just said, it actually does, it just doesn't show it much for movement. It gets to show off because, of all things, Ball is pretty undeniably the best boss killer in the whole game. Dealing damage to bosses isn't normally something you really need to think about in either Adventure or Nightmare in Dreamland. Both games have such a small focus on boss fights, and in a lot of cases, there's overlap between abilities that are good at moving and abilities that are good at killing bosses. Sure, in a level 1-4 of Nightmare, you can get better boss killing options than Burning, but keeping it ensures that you can get through the rest of the level quicker, and as it is, it's actually pretty good at taking out Mr. Frosty, the mini-boss in question. And as for Adventure, you don't need me to tell you for the 8,001st time that Tornado is the best ability in the game, right? Right. So how in the heck does Ball become a better boss killer than already established boss killers like Sword and Spark? Or an ability that, if a modern player would hear about this, they'd absolutely lose their mind, like Hammer? The answer is remarkably simple, and for that, we simply look at the numbers. Considering how this is a milestone episode, we're going to play a little game together. I'm going to say an ability, any ability, and you're going to guess how much damage it does in Nightmare in Dreamland. Feel free to pause when I say the ability if you want to take some time to guess. For a freebie, Kirby spitting out a single star deals 10 damage. Okay, ready? Beam, that one deals 4 points of damage. Cutter, that one also deals 4 points. Parasol, 5 points. Sword, that one's 6. Laser, big hoof, that one's only 3. High Jump, if you can get close enough to deal all 3 hits, the contact, the clouds, and the canceling animation, 18. Mike, each does 14. Hammer, you know, the modern Kirby boss killer, 9 points. And now for the moment of truth. Ball, I'll give you some extra time on this one. Okay, time's up. Ball does 16 points of damage per hit. I may have said 14 in the past, but that has been corrected. 16. Now that was fun, wasn't it? Some of you may be a bit confused, disappointed, nay, betrayed even, that Ball didn't have the highest number out of all of them. Sure, for something like Mike or Crash is 28 by the way, they're limited use, so that would make sense. As it is, Ball is actually stronger than the individual hits on Mike, which is really kind of funny in its own morbid way. But wouldn't something fast like Sword be better, or something with straight up better numbers like High Jump? Oh. Ball can get its hits in really quickly, nullifying any advantage that something like Sword would have. And while High Jump does outclass it in terms of raw numbers, it actually has to connect all 3 of those hits. And in a lot of cases that either aren't possible or asking too much of the player, even in a speedrun setting. For something like Paint Roller, it gets the job done fine. In any percent, for example, you actually do use High Jump over Ball since you would rather have High Jump for better building. But for a fight like Heavy Mole, where the boss is always in the air, or Day-to-Day who has weird invincibility frame stuff, you're better off sticking with Ball. Ball's dominance is best showcased in the boss endurance, where the winning strategy is to get Ball in the Paint Roller fight and just smooth sail all the way to the end. The Nightmare fights require the Star Ride, which is weaker than Ball, but what can you do? I know I literally just said that High Jump does fine against Paint Roller, but if we do a side-by-side of both world records for any percent and boss endurance, High Jump only has the better time because you enter the fight with it. Ball is really powerful. Nowhere is this better showcased, including the boss endurance, than in the second level of Rainbow Resort, a mini-boss gauntlet that... it is not a fan favorite for runners who don't have a solid grasp on how ball works. Don't get me wrong, ball strats are very fast and, more importantly, very consistent, and nothing can really replace it. But if you don't know how to make it work, having a run killer in the 5th to last level of the entire game can hurt really, really bad. This isn't a ball Kirby problem, mind you, just noting the reputation it has among speedrunners. Which, yes, ball Kirby of all things being so technical, it can kill perfect runs is even more morbidly hilarious than anything we've heard so far. Seriously, how many of these bizarre controversies are we going to stumble into for ball of all things? Now, there's one very important factor I've been neglecting to bring up so far, and that's, you've guessed it, Kirby's Adventure. Unlike Nightmare, Adventure is a strange game, and if you aren't just glitching it to use UFO for the whole thing, you're either using bizarre ice strats like in Hundo, or clearing out the bosses with ease using Tornado. But you don't need me to tell you for the 8,000th second time that Tornado is the best ability in the game, right? Unfortunately, some of Ball's excellent traits from Nightmare aren't in Adventure. Most disappointing, its hitbox is remarkably small. Actually, hitting things as Ball in this game is much, much harder. But Adventure wouldn't be Adventure if it wasn't bizarre, so let's talk about RNG manipulation. To describe this as basically as I possibly can, many games, Adventure included, run off of a system of numbers that determine what enemies will do. When you reset the game, the random number generator, RNG, resets. If you reset the game right before Day-to-Day, go into 7-4, grab Ball and leave, then go to fight Day-to-Day, it is consistently and easily a big joke. He'll always do the same thing since the numbers running in the back are consistent. I know that I love to over-exaggerate or make up facts that are so obviously fake, and that's the joke, but no, this is consistent. And, you know, real. That's pretty important too. Oh, but you thought the weirdness ended there? Nope, Kirby's Adventure has a boss endurance too. You'd think that this would be the same as Nightmares, just get Ball and steamroll from there, right? Well, it starts that way. Paint Roller goes down with relative ease really quickly, but unlike Nightmare, there's an even better boss killer that you can mix for in the Mr. Shine and Mr. Bright fight. Any guesses? Any? Yeah, it's UFO. And even when you beat them, you can take UFO outside of the fight? Sure. You don't even need to UFO glitch it like in the main game. You just get to keep UFO for free. And for the record, regardless of whether or not this is possible in Nightmare, UFO in that game stinks. It was gutted pretty badly from how insanely good it was in Adventure, so you can just stick with Ball for the whole thing. But this isn't a UFO spotlight, so I'll stop there and get back into Ball. Actually, is there anything else to really add here? I can't actually think of anything, so let's get into that final verdict. This ability, that was only in 2 games that only gave it 1 collective move, was Ball any good? I think it depends on the game you're talking about. Don't get me wrong, Ball is good in Adventure, but it's a stretch to say anything more. It's really outclassed, but it can do a couple of things that other abilities simply can't. In particular, abusing the way that video games work to get an easy and optimal day-to-day fight is a hilarious highlight for the entire series. If you want to stand out in an adventure, you gotta be weird. Ball got weird. Unfortunately, the game being so centralized around Tornado and UFO, depending on the category, does it no favors. Nightmare and Dreamland, on the other hand, this one, we have a winner here. I wouldn't dare say that it's the best ability in the game. Wheel, Burning, and High Jump are definitely better, but I do struggle to think of other abilities that I'd put in the top 5 over it. It's just so absurdly strong, and basically handles the boss endurance by itself. If you had this ability for Wispy, didn't have to use Sword for Meta Knight, and didn't have to use the Star Rod for both Nightmare forms, the boss endurance would be significantly faster. 7-2 is one of the most important levels of any run, and requires a mastery of Ball's physics and controls to make an absolute joke out of what's supposed to be one of the hardest parts of the game, period. It even has utility for movement, as demonstrated a couple of times in the speedrun. It's admittedly rather niche, especially compared to the 3 abilities I mentioned earlier, but if those niches aren't some of the most insane in all of Nightmare and Dreamland, oh boy. Overall, despite its few appearances, Ball was very good. If it was in more games and continued dealing the kind of damage with some better movement, I'd have no issue calling Ball one of the best abilities in the series. Alas, our reality only sees it in 2 games. Harsh, and it's good in one of them and stellar in another. And despite what you probably expected coming in, that will do it for this video. Thanks again for watching, I really appreciate it. Remember to vote for September Spotlight in the comments down below, or just tell me what you thought about Ball. Did you like it? Did you not like it? Did you not think it would be as absurdly strong as it was? Of course, let me know, like, subscribe, ring that bell, the good stuff. And finally, have a great day, I'll see you in another video. Bye!